Hello, YouTube. I am going to talk to you today about freedom of speech and hate speech. Here's 8 lies for you. 1. Your ass doesn't look fat in those jeans. 2. It wasn't me. 3. Things would have been different if I was there. 4. Men are controlled by their penises. 5. I won't hurt you. 6. Nothing's wrong, I'm fine. 7. I'm stuck in traffic. And 8. You have freedom of speech. Yes, one of the most commonly told lies is you have freedom of speech. The inaccurate mental adumbration of freedom of speech is spoon-fed to you, so no revolt is staged from the industrial prison complex known as peace of mind. Objectors are granted limited opportunity to be heard or read in the mass media channels. Wake up, people. The daily thoughts of journalists are censored by controlled, interconnected networks of large corporate conglomerates. The northeast, west, and south of your reality, better known as the news, is filtered if it does not fit the corporate agenda. Diminished circulation or airtime, loss of jobs, the withholding of advertisements, etc. are actions to help people get with the program. Even the illusion of unrestricted freedom is deep in the toilet, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights have become nothing more than a sanitary wipe. Don't tell me compared to such and such country, we are still better off. No, I am not going to feed your high on what you think should be or what the judicial branch of government proclaims. Freedom of speech exists not when it is contained, when it is treated as a privilege instead of an inherent right, when a video can be flagged because you are opposed to the content, when surveillance laws are fattened up periodically, when a book can be burned because your sense of self is so inflated you refuse to see beyond your bigotry, when the sensibilities of the majority is disturbed and you pay the piper, even when someone attempts to keep the Reverend Fred Phelps of the Westboro Baptist Church from expressing himself. Envision a viewpoint so diametrically opposed to your own that you become irrational, irate, and offended. You get an urge to silence the source and preserve your worldview. Got that in your head? How hard is it to fully acknowledge this communication effort and uphold an individual's right to express themselves? Are you struggling with this? Also, what happened to the freedom to believe what you choose and to openly state your beliefs without being thrown in jail, or face fines, legal costs, or be paralyzed into silence by the thought of such possibilities or realities? Now, freedom of speech demands you defend everyone's right to communicate their thoughts, especially the voice of minority groups and all of those to whom you are completely at odds with. To do differently while paying lip service to free speech is to be both a phony and a liar. Fuck censorship. Fuck it. How many times does a person have to say it is a fundamental right of all people, regardless of their opinion, that they should be free to speak what is on their minds? You know what pisses me off? Moral posers. Yeah, the ones who, with their plausible but false feeling of righteous anger at fill in the blank, with your pick of the day's injustice or your selection of isms, only to condone the silencing of others' opinions. Freedom of speech is not an excuse to say whatever you want and believe no ill consequence will result as a reply to your actions. However, as a rational person, you understand you cannot predict with complete accuracy the reaction of another. For example, if you catch me on the wrong day, release an ear-splitting verbal attack and smile, then you're banking on me to employ discernment or to be intimidated by the possible legal punishment. But I may instead resort to some primitive reaction and clock you on your nugget, maybe plant a shiner on you, or just knock you the fuck out. So let's not conflate the discussion of free speech with personal responsibility. I am tired of the term racist applied when one is making a valid criticism of a collective historical and current occurrence. I am tired of the well-worn device anti-fill in the blank, anti-Hispanic, anti-white, anti-black, anti-Semite to shut up a critic without having to answer the criticism. That's what it's there for. You terminate the debate without actually examining the issues involved. People are subjected to many forms of violence each day because they insist on defending the precious commodity known as free speech. But you are willing to use the cheap tactic of shutting down someone's right to give to you a different point of view because it offends you. It becomes nearly inconceivable to have an exchange of views regarding hate speech without dealing with the rhetoric of politically incorrect speech. Breaking down the concentration of credibility regarding politically incorrect speech is mandatory before we can even get to the more serious violation of hate speech. Both forms of language are incremental conditioners or control mechanisms. Hate, well directed via the use of freedom of speech, can be a good thing. Like pain, hate can be instructive and promote motivation to eliminate an undesirable action that is also inappropriate to personal liberties or the maintaining of a healthy state. This politically correct hellhole seeks to control your very emotions. Sorry, but for me, it's okay to hate corrupt politicians, child molesters, thugs, big pharma, the political machine, red tape, killers, Monsanto, rapists, etc. That said, we now have hate speech. Speech which attacks, supposedly, or demeans a group based on race or disability, ethnic origin, gender, age, religion, a veteran status, and sexual orientation, gender identity. I think I did not leave anyone out. Obviously, with all of the different backgrounds and varieties of labels and purposeful mislabeling, which links us to an identity, it is certain that some of those labels are going to be incompatible or disagree violently. You do not give a weapon to an insane person, someone emotionally unstable, a child, or a person lacking integrity. Weaponizing an individual with legal powers which is not independent of subjective reasoning is dangerous. Let's not be fooled into believing that legislation eliminates or solves the issues of hate. After examination, it is transparent that hate speech is a judicial roadblock. Hate speech is used to silence unpopular opinion in the name of enforcing human compassion, and the pigeonholing of hate speech to outside the boundaries of freedom of expression. The word hate is an adjective used here to generate a subjective shadow and or clutter with bias what should be an objective issue. It is argued that those afflicted with madness, political extremists, etc., can be galvanized into action by the words of others and act on their delusions. However, proponents of hate speech sidestep the reality that one can act on delusions without external prompting. Proponents will claim you seem to focus on the negative aspects, that I am completely disregarding the benefits that have been shaped by this law, authoritatively claiming it is more helpful than harmful. It is then declared that true freedom must have boundaries set by standards that define what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Well, no external factors outside of their own mind are needed for a mentally and emotionally coherent, rational individual to determine what is acceptable regarding speech. Society will not deteriorate if the scales of justice is applied to the restrictions of freedom versus allowing the executive and the judicial branch to foster an inappropriate parental role. For example, the act of assault should not be elevated to a federal issue because it is leveled at a member of a protected group. 1. It is not a fair representation of all the people. 2. If all people under the rule of law were actually protected with the blindness of justice, then the crime is given no exaggerated preference or penalty. It is when political agenda and emotions color actuality that manipulations to the public is accepted and becomes the new standard. Keep your poisonous propaganda and emotional moral policing tactics to yourself, please. I am not here to be a copy of you. I am here to be me. Logic is rarely the common currency, but will you allow the lie of the reported freedom of expression to be cremated and birth the banner of freedom of speech into existence?
Well, that has been a project under construction by the OIC to develop the concept of Islamophobia as being any suggestion of criticism upon Muhammad, upon the Quran, the Hadith, the fundamentals of Islam. But now it's being coupled with the idea of racism.
The organization of the Islamic Conference is now a major force inside the United Nations. For 4 straight years, the UN has adopted a non-binding OIC resolution banning the defamation of religion. Observers say the ultimate goal of the OIC is to get a UN law criminalizing criticism or blasphemy of religion.
And what we don't want is a culture where people don't say what they think. Rather, I would have a culture where people disagree strongly and are willing to change their minds. And in fact, the more you tell people that you're not allowed to talk about this group in a particular way, the more you remind people that they're different and that they're alien. But I don't think that any group is so vulnerable that it can't be resilient enough to withstand some attack like that. There's a big difference between speech and violence. Violence is protected in the law. You're not allowed to hit people, to attack them physically. I think that's right. But speech, I think, is very different in that I think that people can respond or can deal with hatred, and they should learn to. And that's a very important thing that we have in our society. There is no right to not be offended. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is I really don't think that bans on hate speech actually protect minorities. I think what it does is it makes us treat them quite differently to everyone else. Would you feel comfortable about a government telling you this is an offensive idea or word, it can cause harm, whereas this isn't?